Let me minimize this. And I'm going to share my screen. All right, can everybody see my screen? I'll take that as a yes.
Yes.
Bring up the chat. Okay, let's put it just a little bit to the side here. All right, excellent. Welcome, everyone. Let's see, we are entering our 5th week. And so we're going to be covering React routing. Let's just briefly review real quick where we have been and where we are right now. So the first week we installed a server, a Java server, where we were able to create a small, simple HTML static application. Mostly not an application, but just a kind of like a prototype where we could see the wireframes, and we can take a look at how things were, how you can implement navigation between multiple pages, and we just plain old use HTML, CSS, and Bootstrap. We explored how to do things that were responsive, so that depending on the size of the screen, you would be able to target either very wide screens or small tablets or even phones. We then transitioned over to JavaScript for about a week, about 2 weeks. We used JavaScript and jQuery, and we introduced a mechanism that we could program the browser, and we could use JavaScript to programmatically add elements to the user interface by modifying the DOM. We could add, remove, or modify the DOM, and indirectly modify the user interface. And then last week we introduced React.js as an even higher level of abstraction, more than jQuery. jQuery is a very thin layer on top of JavaScript. And React we introduced last week, that allows us to think about web application development as object-oriented, modular, reusable components that you can connect and build something ever more sophisticated. So we're going to keep working on that. We got you started on the 3rd assignment. We shared with you the source code that we demoed last week. We're going to continue doing that today, and get you farther along. And in particular, we need to learn 2 more things so that you have the full set of toolkit and skills for you to continue and work on the assignment successfully. Right? We need to learn how to navigate, right, between components. Right? We need to learn how to do that. That's what the topic is today: React routing. And then the other thing that we need to learn how to do, which you already do know how to do this already, but we don't know how to do it in React, is that how do we integrate with a server, right? That we want to fetch data from a server. You've done that already in jQuery and JavaScript, and where you created a service that allowed you to create users, delete users, update users. We're going to use what we learned back then, right? We're going to transfer those skills over so that we can use them now in React.js, right? We already had started working on the application where we're able to add and delete and update courses, but in a React application, we need to integrate that with a backend, right, so that we can make those changes permanent. Okay. So anyway, so that's the plan for today and the next week or so. There's also a quiz, I believe, that went out earlier this morning and will be available for 48 hours, so up until tomorrow at midnight, right? So it will be available for you to take. It's if you go to quizzes, you'll be able to see it's a quiz number 2. This one, quiz number 2, and so it was made available this morning, and it's available till tomorrow at midnight. and it's on JavaScript, ES6, jQuery, like the title suggests. Okay. Again, it's open book, and I think you have like 40 minutes to complete. All right. All right. Yeah. So let's get started with week number 5. Any questions? The code that we worked on last week is available right here under code repositories. You can see our React.js, right? That's the code that we worked on last week, and the Java server that we worked on the week before, the several weeks before, is also available there. All right, so let's take a look at where we left off last time we met. Okay, so this is the React application that we built. Let's run it here. And let's see, let's wait until it comes up. Okay, this is what we had, right? We had a course manager, we had a course table, we had a course grid, and we had it's kind of like the beginnings of a course editor. And obviously, this is not the layout that we are being asked to implement. Let's see, it looks like the add course is also, we were able to build on that as well. Did we work on delete course? Yes, we worked on that as well. Okay. Okay, so yeah, let's now explore the fact that we don't really want all of these components to show up all at once, right? We really want to be able to choose that. Sometimes we want to see the course table, sometimes we want to see the course grid, sometimes we want to see the course editor. Okay, now the classical way of implementing that was to do navigation using hyperlinks, right? At least that's what we did in our previous assignments and what we were doing. But we're going to move away from that. That's certainly an option. But instead, what we're going to do is this is a single page application, and like the name suggests, we're not going to have multiple pages and then navigate from one page to another page using hyperlinks. Right? Instead, we're going to have what I call our snippets, small snippet of source code that and content that we can programmatically decide to either show only the top part here or the bottom part here, right? But we want to do it using what we learned, right? We want to learn. We want to use the mechanism of using the the URL at the top, but without replacing the entire document, right? Because it's a single document, right? We only load up one single document, a single page, and then that one page, right? We strategically inject one content or another content, depending on what we want to see. We're going to swap out content. Sometimes we're going to show the course table. Sometimes we're going to show the course grid, right? And so we're going to strategically put some content, remove it, and replace it with something else, as opposed to dumping the entire document and replacing it with a brand new document. Okay, so we're not going to do that anymore. Right? We did that in a couple of assignments ago. Okay, so how do we do this? Well, we're going to use a tool, a library, just like React is a library for modifying the DOM. Right? It does not have any mechanisms for navigation or routing. Instead, we're going to use the React router DOM. Okay, so this is the library that we're going to be using, right? It's a very popular, very common, it's a de facto standard on how is it that you navigate in a React application. Okay, and so I encourage you to become familiar with this library. We're going to be using it throughout the semester. We're not going to have chance to look at all what the library has to offer. At most, we'll be able to do maybe not even half. But what the parts that we are going to be able to see, you'll be able to implement 80 to 90% of most of the applications, right? So we're going to install it. I'm going to copy here the installation, and all installations are done from the command line. So let me stop this. So let's do an install. So that's gonna start downloading the library, and it's gonna copy all the code under node_modules. Okay. So yeah. So while that's going, let's explore what we already have. Right. We had implemented a couple of components. The top level component being the app. Right. The app here is the top level component that loads the course manager. There it is, right? And then the course manager declared a state, right? That was the common state for several other subcomponents, right? The course table and the course grid both received the a link, a reference to the courses, right? A reference to the courses. So that it would render the same, right? And then down below you have the course editor. So there we're displaying 3 different pieces of content, but we don't want to display all of it all at once, right? So we need to decide when do we want to display it. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to use the router library, okay, the browser router library, okay? So the way it's going to work, what we're going to do is that we're going to, in here, at the top level of the application, right, we're going to wrap the entire application with a tag, right, that is declared by this library that we just installed. Right, so we're going to wrap the whole thing with browser router. There it is, browser router. Okay, and we're going to load it from the React Router DOM. There we go. Okay, and we wrap the whole thing. All right. So what browser router is going to allow us to do is to choose to display one component versus another component, depending on what the URL looks like, right? So if you go to Course Manager, right? Course Manager right now, it's rendering all 3 things, right? So anywhere under browser router, so any component, it could be here, it could be under its children component, anywhere and under the browser. That's why we put it way above there, right? So that anywhere we want, okay, what we can do here is decide to render certain things when the URL looks a particular way. Okay, so for instance, we might say that I don't want to see this all the time. Right now I see it all the time. It's right there. It's always there. But instead, I want to see it when a specific URL is on this at the path, right? So the way we do that is that we bring in the route element. So the route element, okay, the route element is also part of the library that we just installed. It's right here. We're going to bring it in. We're going to import it from React Router DOM. There it is. Okay. And what this allows us to do is configure that we want to declare a route, that we want to display this course table. We want to display the child, right? Only if I see the following, right? I can, if I see in the path, if I see the following courses table, okay, then I will see this rendered. Okay, all right. So for instance, if I refresh there, oops, let me run it. Okay, let's see, it's loading. Okay, there it is. Notice that we do not see that content. We don't see this content here, course table. We would only see it if the URL matches the following pattern. There it is. There's course table, right? If it's anything else, right, we won't see it. Make sense? So this mechanism allows us to turn on and off different pieces of content based on what the URL says. Okay, only if it's table. Notice that we're not doing what we did before, where you had hyperlinks that pointed to a particular HTML document, and we were throwing away the old content and replacing it. That's not what we're doing here, right? Is that we are loading the components, it's going through, it's looking at the URL, and it's deciding whether it's going to display or not a particular component. Okay, So same thing with grid. We can do the same thing. We can wrap this grid with a route. Okay, we can wrap this whole thing with a route and say that we really don't want to see this unless the path is equal to the following. Unless we see courses grid. Okay. Okay, there it is. So we have the courses table, but we don't see the grid down below. Right? Oh, and yeah, not the editor. Sorry, leave the editor alone. Let's leave the editor over here. So if I say table and I say grid, I see the grid. Or if I say table, I see the table. And the editor also, we don't want to see it all the time, right? We might say that we only want to see the editor when I see the following path. So if I have here path, and it's courses/editor, okay, then notice that I don't see the editor. So if I see here editor, I notice that I will see the editor, but not the other ones. Okay. All right. Let's see what there's a question on the. Okay. But it actually showed the page without table with a random address. With a random address. Where, like, where? What do you mean? As if how?
So what I mean is, the local host. It's to 3000. So it actually showed this page with a random address. Like if you add ASDF to the end, it will still show this. How?
Still show what?
Show the page with course manager and add.
Oh, because it's outside, right? Notice that it's outside of the route, right? So all the other ones are conditional, right? All the other ones are saying I'm only going to show this content if the path is this. This over here is not inside any conditional, right? So anything you put outside of the conditional, this is kind of like an if statement, right? If the path is this, show that. If the path is that, then show this. But this is not inside of any if statement, right? So it's always showing it, right?
Always any address.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, right? So it's not like any address. This is what it's the other way around, right? Only when I see this path will I see this content, right? Normally I would see the content always, right? Any content I would see always with any URL. Over here I'm saying that I will only show this content if I see this particular path.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. All right, excellent. So now, right now, we have been seeing the content by typing the URL here by hand, right? What we'd like to be able to do is maybe toggle between these two. Perhaps in course table, what I could do is make a hyperlink that would change this to a grid, right? And then in grid, I could make a hyperlink, right? That if I click on it, it would change this to a table, right? And then I would be able to toggle between these two, right? So let's do that, right? So if we go to course table, what we could do in the course table, at the beginning, right here below the course table, maybe we could put some kind of icon or URL or icon that I can click on it, and it'll take me to the grid, right? So let's do that. So let's create a hyperlink. We'll create an icon first. So we'll do class name, and so I'm in the table, and FAS, FA. Let's see, and do FA. We're in the table. We want to go. So let's see. Do we have a grid here? No, we don't. We don't have a grid, do we? Let's see. Do we have an icon? No, we don't. How about something that looks like a table? Okay. All right. I guess that looks like a table. I think there was something like a TH. There we go. Right. So that looks something like a grid, right? And let's float this all the way to the right. Float right. There it is. If we put this above, right, it'll be at the same height as the course table. Okay, right now it's not doing anything, right? It's not doing anything. But I can make it into a hyperlink, because what I want to do is if I click on this, it'll change this to a grid. That's what I want it to do. Okay, that's what I want to do. So let's do that. Let's go back. Right, so let's put this into a hyperlink, A, href, and I want to convert this into courses, and then from table I want to go to grid. Okay, there we go. All right, now it's a hyperlink. It's blue. So if I click on it, notice that indeed it changes to grid and it navigates me to the course grid, right? And vice versa. Let's do the same thing in the course grid. So in the course grid, let's go to course grid. Right above here, let's make an icon, class, FAS, something like a list, and FA 2 times, so make it a little big. Oops. Okay. All right, there it is. And let's float it to the right. So float to the right. Okay, there it is on the right-hand side. And let's make it a hyperlink so that if I change this to courses and this goes to table, right, it's going to change the URL into courses table. Okay, so let's click on it. All right, there it is. We can toggle between the two. But notice what's happening here, right? We're still loading this from scratch. We're loading it. So if you look at if you inspect, right, and you look at the network, let's look at the network. Okay, if I click on it, notice that it loads everything. Okay, notice how it loads everything. If I click on it, you'll see that it'll empty this out and it'll do all the queries again, right? So, okay, notice that how it emptied it and then it did a whole bunch of queries. If I click on it, notice that again. So it's still behaving as in, replace the entire DOM, right? Which is what we're trying to stop doing. We don't want that, right? We don't want to throw out the entire document and re-render the entire thing. Okay. So to do this, to fix this, what we're going to do is that we're going to replace this A. We're going to replace this A with link. So link is also part of the React Router DOM, right? It's also part of the React Router DOM, right? What this is going to do is that it's going to cache those contents, right? We're going to cache the content so that if we already navigated, if we had already loaded that content, we're not going to bother going to fetch this content again. We're going to keep it cached in the browser, right? And then we're going to just swap the content, right, into injected where it is, where we said we want it, right? So instead of href, it's 2, like that. Okay. All right. So let's do the same thing in the table. Let's go back to the table and let's replace this hyperlink here. Replace it with link. All right. And then just change it to 2. Okay, so let's try it again. So let's look at this content over here. See that? And then let's toggle. Notice that this did not go out to the server to fetch the data again. See that? Notice that there's no network traffic whatsoever, right? Because it has already, the content had been loaded into the browser and it's cached there in memory, right? And it's doing a swap of these two screens, these two components. Make sense? Right, this definitely improves the performance, right? Especially in the network traffic, and also in the user interface becomes much more smoother, right? You don't see a jarring refresh of the entire screen. Okay. All right, so let's now do it navigating to the editor, right? We want to go to the editor over here, right? Editor. We want to navigate to the editor. All right, so let's do that. So let's see, and so the way we're going to do that is that we're going to go into the rows and the cards and create links in there. So course row, there it is. We want to create a hyperlink out of this title, right? So that when you click on the title, right, when you click on this title over here, right, I want to be able to navigate to the editor. Okay, so let's do that. Let's create a hyperlink out of this, but using link. Okay, to where I want to go? I want to go to courses editor. Okay, let's see. Okay, there it is, a hyperlink. Let's click on it. Notice that I went to the editor. Notice that there was no network traffic, right? So it did a swap of that content dynamically. Notice that I can also go back. See that? I can just go backwards and forwards. So the history, the back buttons and the forward buttons work perfectly the same. like you would expect if this was a normal navigation between multiple screens, right? So it works perfectly fine, right? I also want to do it from the grid. From the grid, I also want to navigate to the editor, right? So let's do that too. Let's go to the grid, and in the card, we'll make the let's see, we can make this button, right? This hyperlink that we have here go somewhere, right? What we can do is that we can use the title here. We can put the title here, course.title. Okay, there is the title, right? And then instead of being a hyperlink, we'll convert this into a link, right? And this will be to, and where do we go? We go to courses and we go to editor. Okay, now if I click on this, notice that I go to the editor. And notice that if I go back, I go back to the grid. Right? So if I go here in the table and I go to the editor and I go back, notice that the editor goes back to the table. Right? So it kind of remembers, right? Any which way I go to the editor, if I just go back, right, it kind of remembers that I can go to where I came from, right? So just to push that idea a little further, let's explore that idea a little further. So imagine I am in the course editor, and in the course editor, let's go to the course editor. There it is. Say I want to go back and say, well, I'm done with the course editor. I want to close this course. I want to go back to the list of my courses. So I can do that perhaps with a hyperlink, right? I can put here maybe a hyperlink here. I can say I class. I can say FA arrow left. Okay. So there's an arrow left. There it is, right? And I can create a hyperlink. So this would be a link. Now the problem here is where to go, right? Because I can only put one thing here, right? I can say that I can go to courses. Courses what? Well, I can only choose to go to the grid or the table. Let's put the table here for now. Right? So let's see if that works. If I click on it, notice that it takes me to the table, and that allows me to take to the course editor, right? But if I go to the course editor, I can also go to the course editor from the grid. If I go to the editor, notice if I go back, I go to the course table as opposed to the course grid. That's not what I meant, right? Because if I go to the course editor from the course grid, the expectation is that I would go back to the grid. See that? Instead, if I click on this, I go back to the table, not the grid. Okay, so how do we do that? How do we fix that? Right? So the way we could fix that is that we need to be able to programmatically say that we want to go back, not to a specific URL, but to wherever we were. Right? So how do we do that? How can we do that? Well, to do that, where's the course manager here? The course manager, right? The course manager can pass along. So the route, right? The route, the link, right? The browser router, right? All these are implementations of the React Router DOM library. Okay. Well, that library also provides certain mechanisms, certain APIs that allow you to invoke and say, hey, I want to go back. I want to do what the browser does, right? If I go here, I want to do what the browser does, right? Of being able to go back, not to a specific URL. I just want to know what the history was and just go back one, right? So how do we do that? So to do that, it works as follows. Okay, it works as follows, right? So the course editor, instead of using this implementation here, there is an alternative implementation, which I'll show you in a minute, right? I'm going to copy that. I'm going to leave it alone, right? Because I'll just leave it there for documentation purposes. I'll leave that alone, right? And I'm going to change this into an alternative implementation, right? Instead, I'm going to use an attribute called render. Okay, so render allows me to provide a function. And that function, right, allows me to do this right here. Put the course editor right here. Okay. Now this behaves exactly the same way, right? Nothing has changed. Nothing's changed. So everything's the same, right? Everything's the same. But the difference here is that I can pass the course editor certain things. I can pass it certain attributes that come from the route. Okay. So the route generates data, okay, about the route. For instance, it generates what the path was that triggered this, right? And a whole bunch of other things that are useful. And we want to pass all that data to the course editor, okay? All right, so it generates a whole bunch of properties that are useful that include functions and methods that allow us to go back, right? Okay, so it passes them through a function right here, props, and we're going to pass those props right here to the course editor. Okay, so the props contains a whole bunch of things. Okay, actually we can print it out, right? We can put this instead of this having just this is a function. See that, and it evaluates to whatever that is. All right. Well, whatever that returns, whatever this function returns, in this case, router course editor, that's what's going to be rendered for that path. Okay. But before I do that, I just wanted to show you what this props is. Right. So I'm going to put this inside of a curly bracket. That's going to allow me to do certain things. And I'm going to do, before it was an implicit return. Right now it's an explicit return. Okay. So this still works same way. Same thing. Right. But this allows me to do a couple things. I can do a console. I can show you what's props. Let me show you what's inside of props. All right, so let's go to the console. Let me go back. All right, and now I'm going to go to the course. I'm going to go and navigate to the course editor. There it is. Look at what all this stuff is being, all this thing that I can pass, that I want to pass to the course editor. One of the things that we're going to be passing, right, is history. See that history right there? That's what we want. Notice it has functions such as go back, go forward. See that? So that property, this props thing, I want to pass it into the course editor. So how do we do that? Well, I know the course editor has a function, right? That means that I can presumably pass parameters. So we know that we can pass attributes such as, I don't know, message, right? We can say message equals hello, right? We can do that, right? And then I can extract it from here using this syntax. Yes, right? And then I can print it here, right? And that works. There it is. All right, so I can pass it things down. But how do I pass an entire object? Well, I mean, I could pass props equal props like that. I could do that. Okay, and then I would have here props. Do that. Okay. Yeah, I could do that. And then I can use the functions that I know are there. I know the functions are there. I could invoke go back, right? And I want to do that when? I want to do it when I click on this hyperlink right here, right? But let me leave this alone for a second, right? Let me leave that alone. Instead, I'm going to implement another one here. So I'll have two ways. So I can show you two different ways, right? So I'm going to create here another class, another icon, and instead of arrow left, I'm going to say FA times, right? Like a cross, like a X. Yep. And I'm going to put this maybe on the right hand side. I'm going to float this to the right hand side. All right, so it looks like this, that X. So that if I click on X, it's like I'm closing this page, right? I want to go back where I was, which is the same thing of what I would do here, right? I want to go back, but I want to leave this alone because, you know, I want to contrast this way of doing it with this other way of doing it, right? So this one, I'm going to do an on click. I'm going to do an on click. So if you click on it, I want to call props, right? Dot history. Dot go back, right? So that's what I'm going to do. We're going to There's going to be a function that we're going to call props.history.goback. There it is. Okay, let's try it out. Click on that. There we go. We went back. All right. So from course table, click here. I go back to course table. If I go to the grid and I go to the editor, if I click on X, notice that it goes back to the grid. There we go. See that? It's working. It's allowing me to go back where I was, right? As opposed to going to a specific, link, hard-coded link. Did that make sense? So you can navigate programmatically, or you can hard code the navigation over here. Okay. All right. Excellent. Let me clean this up a little bit. I don't really need a message. Let me clean that up a little bit. Okay. So I don't really need this message here. And over here, I don't really need to pass this message. Okay. I don't really need this console either. Right. So I'm going to remove that. And since I'm only returning this, I don't really need this return, right? So I don't really need this curly bracket, and I don't really need this curly bracket. There we go. Okay, all right, so that's much easier to read. All right, excellent. Everybody good? Is everybody still with me? All right, excellent. So let's keep going. I do want to show you one more thing. I don't know if it's going to be too jarring. I'm going to present it anyway. I'm going to leave this here so that you can still play around with it, but I'm going to show you one more way of doing this. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to leave it alone. So I'm going to comment it out. So that totally works. Okay. And what I'm going to do is
can you explain a little bit more about the render equals bracket props and then an arrow going to?
Yeah. So the render function, the render attribute, right? Unlike path, right? That we're hard coding a string value. Render function can take a function as an argument, right? So that's a function. See that? The function takes as argument the props, and then it returns whatever's on the right-hand side, right? And we were showing you that this is a full-blown function, right? That is in this, whatever that function returns, that's what the route is going to render. Before it was hard-coded, right? It was always course editor. But now, because it's a function, I could compute this. You know, I could put this like in an if statement. I could put it in a branch. I could put it in a loop. You know, I could put in an entire algorithm here, right? Now, the only thing I'm doing is I'm returning just this one thing, right? Just like I'm doing here. But because it's a function, it allows me to pass some attribute, some parameter to that function, allows me to pass it down to the component, which I could not do. I could not do here. Okay. Now, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So this is so-called an anonymous function. The function.
Yes, it's an anonymous function. Yes, it's sometimes referred to as a Lambda function.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
A quick follow-up. Since we can render something, then why would also need the path here? I mean,
the
since
path,
we can render.
Yeah. No, the path is what it's like the if statement saying if you see this in the path, then this is what you're going to render.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So if it's not the editor here, we cannot render things.
I'm sorry?
If not, for example, if the path here is not editor, it's a table, then only if we enter the table path, we can render this, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. If you see, basically this says if you see this path, then do this. This one says if you see this, right, then render this. Right. If you see this, then render that. Right. The syntax that I'm introducing to you is so that I can pass some functionality that the library provides to be able to navigate programmatically, right? Calling functions such as go back, right, or go forward. And that's only available through the use of this syntax, render. right? That I can pass all those objects down to the as a properties to the course editor, and then I can use the API in there, history. I can say props.history.goback. Okay. I wanted to show you one more, and the one I'm going to show you, you don't have to use. You can totally use what I just showed you here. But I did want to show you one that is a little more advanced. Okay. And if you don't understand it, that's fine. We're going to come back to it and play around with it some more. But hang on. Okay. Check this out. There's another syntax. So I'm leaving the other syntax there, which is totally fine. You don't have to. You can stop right there. If you understood that, you can just do this. But the one I'm going to show you, it's just a slightly more powerful or more advanced, right? So instead of doing props like that, what I can do is that I can expand this props that has all those objects that we saw earlier. It has history, it's got location, match, has a whole bunch of objects in there, right? Props has all those objects in there, including history, location, match we saw earlier, that we printed earlier. Okay, so instead of passing the props object, I can expand and pass all those 3 or 4 attributes all at once, right? As instead of passing the parent object props, I can pass all the children, right, down to the course editor using the following syntax. I can say ... props. Okay, this is a new operator in ES6. It's called the spreader function, right? The spreader operator, right? It takes an object, just like the destructor unwraps one object and takes it. This one spreads them out, right? And then passes them all along one at a time. Okay, so this is equivalent. This is equivalent to saying history is equal to props.history. Okay, and let me put this in a separate line. So this props is equivalent to saying history props.history, location equal props.location, and what else was there? Match is equal to props.match. Okay, so remember these are 3 objects that were inside of the props, right? And we want to pass them down as attributes to the course editor. Well, all this, right, can be rewritten. Right, can be rewritten just with one single operator, ... props, meaning expand all those objects and pass them as individual attributes, right? So if I pass them in, I can now unwrap all those attributes and just cherry pick the only things that I want. All right, so I'm gonna comment that out. Right, I'm gonna leave it alone there, so you can use that if you want, and I can now just extract the part that I want, which is history in this case. You can extract the history. So now I don't really need to do this over here. Right? I can just say history.goback. Right? Again, another way of making the language more compact, right? Not writing as much as before, right? It's shorter. It's much more condensed, right? It does one less level of indirection. So if I go back, this will work just the same way, right? I say X and I go back, right? Or I can go from the grid and then go back. So it works exactly the same way. So anyway, just a few ways of doing the same thing. Explore them, play around with them. I'm sure you will be using go back quite a bit, to be able to navigate. Right. Either way that I showed you is similar, or you can use either one. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Questions. The first one is the advantage just syntactic, or is there a difference in performance?
No, only syntactical.
Okay. My second question is, could you use that syntax, for instance, when you're passing? I think you're passing information into the course row and the, I think, course card files, where you're rendering each card or rendering each row for each course.
Yeah.
Is it better to pass the whole object or to pass each attribute?
Well, I am passing it, right? You mean here?
Yes. So
yeah, here we
you're-
can. Yeah, certainly here we can pass. It's better if you to pass the entire object, right? Like this. We could have done here using that new syntax that I just showed you. We could have done this, right? Dot 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 course, right? Like that. Oh, sorry, course, right? And what that's doing is that it's passing. It's as if I'm doing this. Okay. This is equivalent to doing all these, sending the title, the owner, the last modified. And so now I can just cherry pick the elements that I want. And then inside of course row, I no longer need to say, course dot, course, course dot title, right? Because I can extract the title outside of the course, right? With that new syntax, right? But we're not using that syntax right now, but certainly that could have been an option. Certainly, yes.
And in general, is it better with that syntax or without it? Is it better to pass the entire object or just to pass the attribute?
Well, it depends. It depends if the attributes are enough, then I would use the spreader operator. But if you do need reference to the actual objects, then you're better off passing it in. Especially if you need to pass the object to someone else or to pass it as a callback, then perhaps you need the reference to the original course. But if the attributes are plenty, right, the attributes inside the object, then the spreader operator is plenty.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so we know how to navigate. All right, everybody good with navigation? All right, good. Okay, so the next thing that we need to learn, right, is that these courses are all hard coded over here, right? They're hard coded in the course manager, right? They're hard coded over here. So, but what we want to be able to do is really retrieve this from the database, right? So I do have a couple of courses that I created earlier. The generic courses. There we go. So we have a couple of courses, CS5610, 3200, 4550, blah, 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 a whole bunch of courses, okay? So we want to retrieve this data from this source, right? And we're going to use this almost the same verbatim code that we wrote, I don't know, about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, where we were retrieving these courses, right? And we were using a tabular jQuery table, right, to edit these courses, right? We did that in a service. So let's create here a service directory. So services. And in here, we're going to create a course service file. So this is JavaScript. So this is course service.js. And in here, we're going to need that URL, right? So I'm just going to create a constant here. Now, this here is not a React file, meaning that that this is not rendering anything, right? So I'm not importing React because I don't need to render anything here, right? The services, the only thing that's going to do is talk to the server, right? Retrieve data from the server, okay? So it's going to have functions such as const, find all courses. Right, it's going to have const create course, right? That I can take a course as an argument. It's going to have const delete course and maybe the course ID, right? So the same functions that we implemented several weeks ago, right? Course, right? And what else do we want? Maybe delete, create, update course, maybe update course. And course ID and the course. Okay. All right, and we can export these so that they can be made available outside the scope of this file, so people can retrieve them. There we go. Okay. All right, so let's implement first find all courses. Now, this is going to be very, very similar to what we built a couple of weeks ago, right? So nothing new here. The only thing new here is that I'm going to strictly use ES6, right? I'm not going to use any older syntax, right? So instead of curly brackets, I only really need to call the fetch function. I need to fetch the courses URL. That's going to come back with a promise, right? That's going to come back with a response, which I am going to parse the JSON body. Okay, that's it. So now I can, in the course manager, I can load that up. I can say import the find all courses from the course service. There it is, right? So that at some point I need to load that array, right? I need to load this array here, this array, and I want to replace this array that I have here hard coded, right? So where do we do that? Well, the components, right? The component notice that it's inheriting from the React.component, and that let's see. There's a question on the chat. Would you recommend packing all these functions in the class? Sure, a class would be an alternative, really good alternative. Yep. Create a service instance in course manager and access using service.find. Yep, perfect. That would be a perfect way of doing it. Yes. Where was I? Right. So we are inheriting from the React.component several functions. One of the functions is this function called component did mount. So component did mount is one of several functions that we are inheriting from React.component. Okay. And if you implement those functions will be invoked by the infrastructure at certain strategic times. Okay. In particular, component did mount is called when the component, like the name suggests, right? Once it's been loaded, right, and it's rendering, right, and the infrastructure is giving you a chance to say, hey, this is a good time, right? If you want to make changes to the state, right? If you want to make any changes, maybe fetch some data, whatever, right? Update the state. Then if you tell me that the state changed, then I will go on and re-render the content. Okay, so let's do that, right? So we're going to go and do a fetch. We're going to say find all the courses. There they are. We're going to come back with the actual courses from the server. And what we're going to do is that we're going to change the state. We're going to say this.setState, right? And we're going to say that courses, the courses, I'm going to set it, is going to be equal to actual courses. All right. And since the state has changed, presumably it will reload. Okay, so let's see. And indeed, I believe these are the courses that are coming from the server. Let's see, we have CS5610, 3200, 4550, and then new course, new course, new course. So 3 new courses. So it looks like we are indeed rendering it, right? And notice that if I go to the grid version, I'll have the same exact courses down here. Make sense? All right, so it looks like it's working. Any questions on that? Let me show you an alternative syntax. I'm going to copy this. All right, I'm just going to leave it alone right there. I'm going to comment that out. If I would call this courses, and this would have been courses right here. Okay. Well, ES6 provides a syntactic simplification of this of what I just wrote here. Okay. All right. So let's collapse this a little bit like that. Okay. When in a JSON object, right, the name of the property is the same as the name of the value, well, ES6 gives you the following syntax. You can drop the value, and this is understood to be equivalent to this. Okay, see that? And again, with the intent to minimize and make the syntax even much more compact. Okay, everybody good? All right, this works just the same. Also, this component mount is only really doing one thing. So I could convert this into its ES6 equivalent. Okay, and because I'm doing one thing, I can just remove the curly brackets. Right, so it becomes even much more compact. Right, and this works just the same way. Everybody good? Okay. All right, excellent. So we can do the component did mount. How about delete course? Right. So delete course. What's delete course doing? So delete course. Right. Presumably, I can click on delete. Well, not here. Let's go back to the list. If I delete, right, and I refresh, it's not really deleting, right, because we never told the server that we deleted anything, right? So let's fix that. Let's go to the service and let's implement delete. Next. Okay, so delete, the way delete is going to work is going to be very much like this course ID. I'm going to copy that. I'm just going to paste it here. Okay, and but this fetch needs to append the course ID at the end, right? So let's convert this into an expression, right? $. Okay, and put it inside of backticks. There we go. So now we can append the course ID, right? So this will be course ID. Again, let's put this inside of curly brackets and put a $sign in front of it. There we go. So we've concatenated the course ID. Also, the default that we copied from is a get, right? Instead, this needs to be a delete. So let's convert the method, the default method, from a get. We'll convert it into a delete. Okay. All right. Now we can use the delete course, right? I can expand on this and say delete course. There it is. Okay. And now this delete course can use that other delete course, right? I can say the delete course that I imported, right? And I'm going to pass the ID of the course that I'm deleting, right? And it's going to come back with some status information from the server saying whether it was successful or not. Okay, and what are we going to do here? Right, we're going to say we're going to do this part, right? We're going to do this part over here. After we come back from the server, we're going to compute the new courses by filtering out the course that we want to remove and then resetting the courses. You see that? All right, let's try it out. Let's try it out. So let's remove this one over here. Let's move these two. Let's refresh. Okay, it looks like it was permanent, right? It's permanently removed. Okay, let's fix this a little bit. Let's fix this a little bit. Let's see. If this were called courses, oh, okay. So notice that we are calculating the new courses using this.state courses, right? So basically, we're using the previous state of the courses to compute the new state of the courses, right? I think there's a question on the chat. May I ask again, why ID, not ID? Oh, because when you ask for these objects from the server, if you'll notice, right, in the network, right, when we ask for courses, there they are. The courses are coming from the server. The identifier is _ID. Okay, so that's the unique identifier that comes from the server. It's actually coming from a MongoDB database, and MongoDB creates a primary key, whether you like it or not, right? And it calls it _ID. It's part of the standard in MongoDB. Okay, so one thing that I mean, this is working, right? Don't get me wrong. It's behaving the way it's supposed to behave, right? But this is considered to be bad practice, right? Whenever you calculate, you need to set the state. When you set a new state based on the previous state, okay, you should not do it this way, right? So I'm gonna fix this, right? And so this .set state has two syntax, right? One of them allows you to pass the new state, and that's it, you're done, okay? And that's fine if that state that you're passing is not based on the previous state, which in this case we are, right? We're calculating the new courses based on the old courses, okay? So I'm going to comment this out. Right? I'm going to implement it this other way. So this .set state has another alternative syntax, which takes as argument takes a function, takes an anonymous function. Okay, and this function is to this function, this .set state passes the infrastructure passes the previous state. Okay, it passes the previous state, which is the equivalent to this like new courses over here, right? Now you can calculate whatever this function returns. Whatever this function returns, it will be the new state, whatever it returns. Okay, so let's calculate the new state. So it will be, we'll say let new state or next state, right, is going to be, we're going to copy the old state because we want everything that's there. Well, actually, do we want everything? Let's see. What it really contains, what the state. It only really contains the courses, right? That's all it really contains, right? So we can say, right? So new state is an object, right? That and we're going to say that next state, right? Dot courses is going to be equal to what? It's going to be equal is going to be equal to the previous state dot courses, and the same thing that we did here. We filter, right? We did a filter. So let me copy that filter. That courses dot filter. Okay, let's put it in separate lines. Let's put this maybe over here so that we can follow along. So I'm going to take the old state, we'll iterate over the old courses, and we're going to filter. We're only going to keep the courses where the course to delete that we're passing here, right, is not the course that we're iterating over. Right now we have the next course, the next state. We have the next state, and we're just going to return the next state. So return next state. Okay. All right. Let me see. Why do we iterate over the old courses instead over the new state after we delete the course? Why do we iterate over the old courses instead over the new state? Well, the new state doesn't have anything, right? The new state is empty, doesn't have anything, right? So we are computing the new courses, right, based on the old courses. So the new courses will be the old courses having filtered out the one we don't want, the deleted one, okay? And so the next state is only going to contain the courses of which we have filtered out the one that we don't want.
Professor?
Yes.
It seems like the motive is to be like a little bit more efficient with memory, except wouldn't filter copy the array anyways?
It is copying the array, right? It is copying the array.
I just don't totally understand why this is better.
I'm sorry?
I guess I just don't totally understand why this is better than the previous.
Oh, yeah, no, the copying this over is identical to what we had before, right? And so it's not better or worse or anything, right? Okay. The only thing that is different is that set state is using this syntax of a function as opposed to this blindly setting the state like this, okay? And when you use this, and you should use whenever the next state is based on the old state, you should always use this syntax, no matter how you calculate it, right? Whether you use filter or whatever you use, right? That's irrelevant, right? Here, what's relevant is that if your next state is based on the previous state, then you should use the function way of doing it as opposed to this syntax, right?
Okay, thanks.
And the reason is that this set state guarantees the synchronicity of the operations, right? There might be multiple things happening at the same time, modifying the state, okay? And this makes sure that things occur in the order that they were meant to happen.
Ah,
Okay.
okay. That's the key. Thank
Whereas
you.
this one does not.
Okay.
This one
Makes
does
sense.
not guarantee the order, the sequence of orders, right? I mean, we're not doing many things here. I mean, it's just us clicking around, and that's not a big deal. But you could imagine several things happening at the same time, and so this would not guarantee the synchronicity of the events, whereas this one does guarantee.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So yeah, and if you go out to the job market and you do this, right, people will scorn at you. That, you know, they'll say, no, use this syntax instead. All right, so let's try it out, see if this blows up. Let's refresh and let's delete. Okay, still working. Oh, and refresh. Let me see if it refreshes. Okay, it's gone. Okay, good. Also notice that because now the state is fully defined by the server, right? We don't really have to maintain this copy of bogus courses, right? Okay, so we can initialize it just to empty array. Okay. Now, whenever we want to set the state of something, right? We always have to declare it in the state. Okay, see, notice this syntax over here. See that? We're setting the state blindly to be the courses. See that? Here, we're not using the new syntax I just described, because here, when we're setting the courses, we don't care what the previous state was, right? Because we are initializing the component, right? And at initialization, we don't care what the old list of courses was. This is the latest and newest list of courses as far as we know. So we are blindly setting the state to be these courses, irrespective of what the previous state was. That makes sense? So this syntax over here is completely appropriate, that we don't use the function, right? Whereas here, we have to use the function because we are dependent on the previous state. Okay? All right. So let's, another thing here, notice that this delete course and this delete course is kind of confusing, right? Because they have exactly the same name, right? It almost looks as if it were a recursive call, right? So to alleviate that confusion, oh, there was a question here. Is name previous state a keyword? No, it isn't. You can call it whatever. It's a variable parameter, or we can use all course. Yep, that's fine. Well, it's not the course, right? Because previous state, yes, it contains courses, but it can contain other things, right? It can contain many more things than just courses, right? Which begs the question, right? Begs the question, well, what if I have a whole bunch of other stuff in here, right? And I have, you know, whatever, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, and blah, 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 whatever, in the state. Well, here, when we create the new state, we're only populating the courses. See that? We're only populating the courses. Well, what happens to all the other variables in the state, right? They're gone, right? I lost them because I'm only populating the courses. So what if I wanted to have all those other things as well, right? Which I'm not changing. I know I'm only going to change the courses, but everything else also needs to go into the state, right? So what I can do is I can copy over everything that's in the previous state first, right? Before I go on and change this. Yes? So what I can do to copy, an easy way of copying is that you use what the spreader operator that we looked at earlier, right? Remember the spreader operator we used earlier? Well, I can say the spreader operator previous state. That's going to copy, you know, every single attribute that is in the previous state over to this new object next state. Okay. All right. Also, there is a alternative syntax to this. Do I want to do that? There's an alternative syntax to this, right? So I'm going to leave this here because this is totally fine. This syntax is perfectly fine. You can leave it like it is, but I just want to show you a more advanced syntax. Right, so I'm just going to paste it again. right? I'm going to just comment this out. I'm going to show you an alternative syntax. So next state, I'm going to copy over the previous state like that, just perfect, right? And what am I doing right here? I am overwriting whatever the previous state had, all the courses that I brought over, right? Because previous state has all the courses, right? Well, now next state has all those old courses. So here I want to overwrite those courses, yes? Okay, well, there's a syntax that allows you to merge these two things, right? These two operations into one single operation, okay? So what we're going to do here is we're going to expand this and put this in a separate line like that, okay? Now, this is doing the same thing, right? It's just copying things over. But if you say comma over here, you can override individual elements, individual attributes, right? You say, okay, well, I know you copied all the old courses, but I want to override the courses that you just copied over. I want to overwrite and recalculate them. Okay, I want to override it. What do I want to put in there? I want to put this here. Right, I can say previous courses like that, right, and then not that. Right, so again, this is an alternative syntax, does exactly the same thing, right? So we have courses, and let's put here filter, and maybe this in a separate line, maybe like that, so it's easier to read. Okay, that's an alternative syntax. Basically, it says copy everything over, but override the attribute courses to have this value on the right-hand side, right? Basically, munging together these lines into a little bit less lines. All right. Yeah, I mean, ES6 has so many unbelievable new things. And let me show you yet another really cool syntax, right? We can rewrite this whole thing. We can rewrite this whole thing, right? I'm just going to comment it out. I'm going to comment it out. Oops. Comment it out. I mean, I'm leaving it there so that you can take a look at it later on, right? But I can rewrite all this into a single line, right? I don't even need this extra variable to declare it, right? What I can do is to say that this whole thing, this function here is going to evaluate to the following expression. So I'm going to put a parenthesis here and a parenthesis here, close the parentheses here, okay? And what does it evaluate? To the following JSON object that contains the old previous state and the courses overwritten so that I don't need to even do the return like that. Okay, so this is a much more compact syntax that does exactly the same thing. Right? What does this evaluate to? It evaluates to this JSON object, which contains the old data from the previous state, plus the courses having been overwritten. Okay, so again, a couple different ways of doing it. This is by far the shortest and most compact syntax. All right. Okay. Yeah. So let's delete. How about? Yeah, I was mentioning earlier that this is a little confusing because you have two delete courses here, right? So what we can do, it'd be nice if we could have like an identifier in front of this that would let us know that this is really a function that belongs in a different class or different module, right? So what we're going to do here that is instead of using this syntax, right, of extracting individual elements from this course service, what we're going to do is that we're going to create here an object. I'm going to say const API, and we're going to populate here all these functions. We're going to put in there find all courses, right? It's going to be equal to find all courses. And delete course, right? It's going to have delete course. Right? So it's an object, it's a map, right? Name, value, name, value, name, value, right? What else? Delete course, create course, right? And finally update course. So we're going to do that, and then we're just going to export this. We'll say export the default export API. right? Notice that default in there, which none of the other ones have default. See that? None of the other ones have default. That means that because this is default, I don't need to put it in, I don't need to wrap it inside the curly brackets. I can just say that one thing that you are defaulting, we're exporting by default, I'm going to tie it to a variable here called a course service. Okay, now the only one thing can be exported, right? And so it's bound to this one variable. Notice that it's not in the curly brackets, right? You can only have one variable out here outside of the curly brackets, right? Because there's only one default. And what's the value of this course service? The value is this object here, which then allows me to say course.service dot find all courses, which is basically this find all courses. So let's use that. It's like find course service. I can go in here and say course service dot delete course, right? So that's a little bit more readable. It's a little more readable, right? Because now it's namespace, right? Now it's clear that this is not a recursive call, right? That makes sense. Okay. Also, if we go back here, right? Remember that because these name value pairs are the same, right? ES6 allows you to do the following, right? It allows you to just empty that out like that, right? And so this is a reduced syntax that means find all courses colon find all courses. Yes. So I'm just going to remove it from a couple just to give you an example that this really means find all courses colon find all courses, right? I'm going to leave some there, some not. What else? I think that's it. Obviously, I don't need to even declare API. I can just do the export default here, right? I can export default this object without declaring the variable at all. I can just export that that object. All right, excellent. So let's do add course, right? So we want to post a new course, right? So let's build it. So create course here. So create course is going to be what? It's going to look very much. It's going to look a little bit like the delete course. So let's copy that. Let's put it in there. Right, it's going to be a post. It's not going to need an ID. Right, it goes directly to the URL. It's going to need what? It's going to need the body. It's going to contain the string representation of the course, and it's going to have the headers. Right, it's going to be content type, and then application JSON, right? Okay, and this is going to return the actual object that was inserted, right? So create course can be written in terms of what? Of course service dot create course. Okay, and let's put it down here because there's the new course that we're adding, right? And we're going to pass the new course, and this is going to come back, right, with the actual course, which we're going to do what? We're going to push. So notice again, right? We're calculating the new state in terms of the old state. So again, this is a no-no, right? We're not going to do it like this way, right? So we're going to comment that out. Instead, we're going to do what? We're going to do a this.setState. Okay, and so we want to have the old previous state. Okay, and we're going to evaluate. All right, so put in a new line. What are we going to come back with? We're going to come back with a JSON object, a new JSON object that contains all the old state stuff, but we're going to override the courses to be the old courses. Right, it's going to be the old courses from the previous state. So just like this one allows you to copy the entire old state, right? An entire object. Well, you can use this same exact syntax to copy an entire array. right? So we're going to copy this. The new array for courses is going to have the old array, right, of courses. So we're copying the entire array from the old state. But at the end, we're going to append this new course. Okay, so this syntax of using previous state and then the attribute, right? That syntax is override an attribute that has already been copied. But when you use it with an array, right, and you do a spreader, you're copying all the elements from the old array, but then you're adding something at the end that contains the course, right? And that's what gets sent back as the new state. Okay.
It work without the spreader in the course array.
I'm sorry.
Line 34, like it wouldn't work without that spreader. Like you couldn't.
Yeah, no.
You couldn't add it to the end otherwise.
No.
Makes sense.
You can add it to the end. You could do this like that. And so now you're prepending. So you're putting the course at the top.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but you need the spreader either way.
You do
to
need
make
the
sure
spreader,
you get all
yes.
that. Okay,
Yep.
cool.
A quick question: why do we need the parentheses here? This pair of parentheses here.
Yeah, because this curly bracket means the opening of a body of a function, and we don't want that interpretation, right? We want it to be a JSON object as opposed to the opening of a function body, right? So notice that at the beginning of a function, you have a curly bracket. See that? Right. So if we had this, then this curly bracket would be interpreted as the beginning of the body of a function. Right. Instead, we want it to be interpreted as a JSON object. All right. So this parentheses says evaluate this JSON object, and that's what's going to be returned.
So can we replace the parentheses with this parentheses?
Replace what? I'm sorry.
Replace like this. I don't know how to say this in English.
Curly bracket.
Yeah, it's
well, no, because we want a JSON object, right? So this has to be a JSON object. So this has to be a curly bracket.
Oh, I mean, if can we replace the parentheses with a curly bracket?
Oh, here like that? Yes. Well, no, because if you have this, if you have the curly bracket, then you have to have an explicit return, right? And so we're using we want to be able to take advantage of the syntax that this is an implicit return.
Yeah.
Right. So if you put the curly bracket, then you have to have an explicit return.
Okay, I got it.
So it would add a whole bunch of an additional line, and then an additional line for the curly bracket and all that.
Yeah.
So again, a good developer is a lazy developer. So we are reducing the amount of keystrokes, right, to be more productive. Okay, so let's see if this works, right? Create, and we're pushing to the local array, right? So let's test it. I guess somebody already tried it out. So do add course. Okay, looks like it's working. There it is. So let's refresh. Okay, it's working. All right, very good. Okay, excellent. So we can delete. We can update. What else can we? What do we want to do? Now let's try now being able to maybe edit, right, and modify one of these, right? Maybe I want to click on the edit button here, and I want to maybe edit this content. So, for instance, what I like to be able to do is that, in the row, right, in the row, which is somewhere in the table, and there's the row right here, right? This title, this link, this hyperlink, most of the times I want it to render as a hyperlink, but sometimes I would like it to render as an input field, right? Maybe like an input field over here, right? Where you have a class form control. There it is, like an input field. And I want to be able to toggle, depending if I'm editing or if I'm not. And this might have maybe the initial value, right? Where this might have as an initial value is the title. I have the title, and then maybe I can edit it. Okay. So first of all, let's see how we can toggle on and off whether this is showing either the link or showing the editor, right? So how do we do that? Well, we're going to use this icon here, like the edit icon here, to turn on the input field. I'm going to use this here to turn off the input field, right? So let's do that. So where do we store that data? Right, you might be tempted to put a variable here, let, and a function saying, editing. Okay, that's not going to work because this is going to be loaded again, and this variable will be reset to its initial value. So that's not going to work. Okay, so we need a place where we can store this information. Okay, and up to this point, the only way that we know how to store any state information is to use something like this.setState, right? That's the only way that we can remember anything as we are working. Okay, so we're going to be using a new technique that in React called hooks. Okay, so hooks allow us to maintain state, right? Because functions, unlike classes, right? Classes can have can have all sorts of these life cycle functions. They get this.setState, right? They get all these things are being inherited from React.component. We're not inheriting anything, right? We're just a plain lonely function. We're not inheriting anything, okay? So what React hooks is going to allow us to do is to maintain state nevertheless, okay? So for this to work and still be a function, still be just a regular function, we need to make a little bit of changes, right? First of all, let me change this into this syntax where we can see each one of these attributes one at a time, everyone in the single line like that. Okay, that's a little bit easy to read. There we go. All right, so we're going to change a little bit here, right? So what we're going to do is that we're going to convert this, right? Still a function, but instead of having this implicit return, right, we're going to change this to be an explicit return, right? So we're going to put this in a parentheses first, right? Then we're going to put a return here, return, okay? And we're going to convert this into a whole function like that. Okay? All right, there we go. Okay. All right, so we have the same exact logic as before. Nothing has changed yet, right? So if I go back, this is still rendering like a row, right? No difference, right? But because we can now have an explicit return, right? We can now add stuff here that we couldn't add before. Okay, we can add a whole bunch of other stuff here. I want to do more things than just rendering. Okay, I want to maintain some variable, some state variable. So the way we do that is that we're going to bring over use state. Okay, so use state is going to allow us to maintain state within a function, right? And this is the way it works, right? So we want some kind of variable that remembers whether we're editing or not, right? And if we're editing, right? If we're editing, then we want to show the input field. If we're not editing, we want to show the hyperlink. Okay, so let's declare here a variable constant. But this variable, we need to also be able to change it over time and also remember its value, whether it's true or false, right? It's going to be just a simple Boolean. So the way we're going to do that is that we're going to declare it in an array, and we're going to declare the variable in the array. Right? So it's going to be editing, comma, right? Set editing, right? And who's gonna set this? Initialize this? Well, use state is going to initialize it, right? Like that. And use state takes as argument the initial value of our variable, right? So this is going to be a Boolean variable, so we're going to initialize it as false. Okay. So what you say, this array syntax here, which is kind of like a weird array because it's on the left side. This is the equivalent of the curly bracket. The curly bracket is a destructor, right, for objects, which means that we are passing an object, right? And we are extracting all the different attributes of that object and then binding them to these variables. Well, the same thing you can do with arrays, right? So what useState is doing is that it's returning an array, and here we are destructing that array, right, and binding an element, call editing, into a local variable and a function that it returns, and we are binding it to set editing. Okay, right? Now we can use this as just like any other variable, which is a Boolean variable initialized at false, right? So we can do the following. For instance, what we can do here is that we want to show one but not the other. So how do we do that? Right. So what we can do here is that we can wrap this whole thing inside of an expression in curly bracket. Okay. And then we can append variables, expressions, Boolean expressions that evaluate to true or to false. If the expression evaluates to false, then the whole thing evaluates to false and it does not render. So for instance, if I say false here and, right, then false and anything is going to return false. So this whole thing returns false and it doesn't render. Right? So notice that if I go here, notice if I refresh, notice that the hyperlinks are gone. See that? And same thing with the input field I can do. So let's make this a little bit easier to read. Like that. There we go. Same thing with the input field I can do, right? I can put a curly bracket around it, right? And I can put a false in front of it, right? And now that one doesn't render either. So both of them are false, both of them are gone, right? But I can turn one on, I can say true, and the links appear, or this could be false and this could be true, right? And then it shows the input fields. So we want this to be a variable, right? So we're going to use which variable? We're going to use the editing variable, right? The editing variable, this one right here. So we're going to put here, here, if we're not editing, I want to show the input field. But if we are editing, I want to show the input field. See that? Right, there we go. So notice that initially it's false. Initially it's false, right? And so it's since it's not false, it's showing the links, but because it's false, it's not showing the input field. But if we initialize to true, notice that now we show the input fields, right? So we need to be able to set that variable dynamically. We need to set that variable dynamically, and we're going to do that with the icons. Okay. All right. So if I click on edit, I want to set the flag to true. Yes, we are editing. But when I click on save, I want to set it to false. Right. So let's do that. So we're gonna put these together like that. I'm going to say on click. Why is this doing it? We're going to say on click. If we click the edit, we're going to call set editing to true. And if we click on the check mark, we're going to set it to false. Okay, let's try it out. So if I click on editing, notice that it changes the input field. See that? If I click it here, notice that it's the input field. It kind of toggles and it hides the hyperlink and it replaces it with the input field. And if I click OK, notice that it now sends it back to the link. You can also apply it to the hyperlinks, to these icons, right? You could say here, you could say, well, I don't want to show this all the time, right? I want to show this only. I want to show the pencil only if I'm not already editing, right? So if I'm not editing, right, I want to show this. But if I am editing, right, I want to show the save button. So now these kind of toggle each other. See that? I can say OK. See, I can toggle these, right? And it toggles the left-hand side as well. Okay. All right, excellent. So here, notice that I can't actually type anything because that input field is forever tied to the value of the title, right? It's forever tied to that constant value of the title, and the title's not changing, so the value is not changing. So somehow I need to change it somewhere. I need to change it in a local variable, which I don't have, right? Okay, so let's do that. Let's what we're going to do here is that we're going to again declare a local variable where we can play around with that title. Yes, right? So we're going to call it maybe a new title, say, right? And then we'll call this set new title. Okay, this is going to be a use state. And what's the initial value of the new title? Well, the title is going to be the initial value of the title, right? So we can take that title here as the initial value. Now this here, we can use that as the value of the input field, okay? Which is exactly what we want. So if I edit, it's still there, right? It's the same value. I still can't edit it. But at least I know that my new title is working, right? I was able to copy as the initial state of the new title, the title that you pass to me as an argument, as a parameter. Now I need to change that title as I type. Every time I press the keystroke, I want to change and set the new value of new title. So let's do that. What we're going to do here is that as I type, for every keystroke, right, as the events occur, as I click on every single keystroke, this is going to generate a whole bunch of events. Okay, and that event, okay, let's look at the event. Let's print out the event. So console log event. Let's look at the event as we type. So go to the console. And so as I type, see that it's generating all these events. Let's look at the event. So the event has a particular element called the target. See that? If I hover over it, it's tied to that input field, right? If I open it up, it has value somewhere here. It's not showing it. There's a variable called value, which shows me the current value of that input field, right? Which we can use to update the new title, right? So let's do that. I'm going to say, I'm going to set the title. We're going to set the new title to be whatever's in the event, the target, the value. All right, we're going to set the new title, and that's going to trickle and update this value here. Okay, let's try it out. Now I can type. See that? I can type. I say, okay, it's not doing anything really, right? It's not. I'm not doing anything with the saving. So let's work on the saving now. What happens when I actually save? So when I save, it's this save over here, right? It's this is my checkbox, right? So I don't just want to change the set editing to false. I want to update the server. So I want to do not just this set editing to false, right? I want to set this new title that I've been typing. I want to send it over to a server for saving, right? So let's create a function that does that, right? So let's create a whole function that does that. So let's create a function right here, and we'll call it maybe const save title. Okay, so it's a function, and we're going to call it. I'm going to call it here. So instead of calling set editing false, okay, we're going to call save title. Okay, so in save title, right, we are going to set editing to false, but we also need to send the new course with the new title over to the server. So how do we do that? Right, so notice that with the way we've been communicating with our parent, right, is through functions that are being passed to us. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to say, we're going to notice that we have the course. So we're going to create the new course. So const new course. This is going to be the old course, but the new title is going to be, I'm going to copy from the new title. Right, so I'm copying the old course, everything including the old title, but I'm going to override the title to be this new title that I've been editing. And then I'm going to send it over to a function that somebody's going to pass me, update course. I'm going to pass you the course, the new course. Okay? Right, which this function doesn't exist, but I'm passing it. Somebody's going to pass it to me. Okay, who's going to pass it to me? My parent. My parent is table. Course, there it is. So I'm going to pass it. Presumably somebody passed it to me. Okay, who's my parent? Course manager, I believe. So course manager actually has the function update course, right? That we're passing it from way down there. I'm going to do console log course just to see that we are passing the course. All right, so let's look at that. All right, so let's clear that. So let's edit this. 3200 is going to be 5200. Let's say OK. And something died. Something bad happened. Let's see. Update course is not a function. Update course. Update. So way down in the row, update course. There it is. Update course. Update course. Where does it say update course? Course row 22. Course update course. There it is.
Are you giving it to the course row?
I thought I was. Let's see. Table. Update course. This props update course. And then the table is the manager. Oh, I never passed it to the course table. Yeah, I never passed it. Thank you. The, update course equals this dot update course. There we go. Let's try it again. Okay, let's change this to 5200. And say OK. And there it is, right? There's the object. There's the object with the new title. There it is, the new title with the ID and everything. It's got all the meta information that came from the server. So this is ready to be sent back to the server for re-updating, right? Right. So let's do that. Let's send it over to the server. Right. So let's implement that in the service. So in the service, let's copy this into the update course. Right. And this is going to be a put. Right. It's going to be a put. We got the body. We got the headers. The course ID. That's going to be a inside a backtick, inside an expression, $. We're going to concatenate the course ID, right? Which is going to be an expression like that, right? Good. And we are exporting it. Very good. So from the manager, we should be able to call it now, right? We should be able to say course service dot update course. It expects the ID first, right? And then the course. Going to come back with a status saying whether it was successful or not. And here we can change our state, right? We can change our state, and basically what we need to do is this course now needs to replace, right, whatever old courses were there. Needs to replace that with a new title, with a new everything, right? So let's do that. Again, we're going to use the new syntax here. We're going to say this dot set state. We need the previous state because we're going to iterate over all the old courses, and we're going to keep all the old courses except this one course, right? We're going to take the new course here, right? So we're going to rebuild the state, right? So it's going to use the previous state. It's going to calculate a new JSON object. Okay, which is going to first contain the old state, but we're going to override the courses to be what, right? So we're not going to copy the old courses. We're going to iterate over all the courses, and we're going to keep the old courses, but only going to grab the new course if the new course matches the ID of the old course, right? Like this. So we're gonna take the old courses, and we're gonna map through them. We're gonna iterate over the courses. So here's each one of the course. So which one do we keep? Which one do we keep? Remember, the map recreates the array, okay? And the array will contain whatever we return here. So what do we return? Well, if the course.id is the same as the new course, the updated course.id, that's the course that I want. I'm going to return that course. Otherwise, if it's not the same ID, I want to keep the old course, C. Right? I'm going to return. So the new set of courses, I'm going to iterate over the old set of courses. Here's each one of them. I'm going to compare the ID with the new course, right, with the updated course. If the IDs match, I don't want the old course. I want the updated course, and that's going to go into the array courses. But if it is different, then I do want the old course. Okay? All right? All right, let's see if this works. All right, so let's update this. So let's refresh here. Let's update this. So we'll say some bogus. Say OK. And it looks like it works, right? Let's refresh. There we go. It worked. Okay, perfect. Now, there's a shorter syntax to this. Let me show you a more terse syntax, right? Remember, ES6 is all about terse. Let's see. What's the question here? Hey, just curious. How late are we running till? I'm just going to do this one syntax, and then we're done. Right? Just a second. Yeah, we're almost done. So here. Right. So this is going to stay the same. This is going to stay the same. I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to comment it out. And I'm going to put another syntax here, which is equivalent, but it's much more terse. Okay. So we're going to do the following. I'm going to say we're going to convert this into a tertiary syntax. We're going to say I'm just going to do this. So C ID is equal to this question mark, right? And so if this is true, then it'll evaluate to that. Otherwise, it evaluates to C. Okay. All right. So that's this, right? Let's put this in a new line. Okay, this is equivalent to this, these 4 or 5 lines over here, right? This is just saying I'm iterating, there's C, right, as a parameter to the function. And I'm checking, are they equal? I'm asking question mark. If it's true, then I want this. If it's false, I want that, right? So this is a tertiary syntax, right, that allows you to, again, compact this, and this should work the same. Let's refresh. So I'm going to edit and say OK, and then it updates. Very good. OK, excellent. So that's all I had for you today. I'm going to commit this and push it so that feel free to use it for your own purposes, for your own assignments. And that's all, folks. Any questions?
I have a question, Professor.
Yes.
So for this assignment, you haven't really, I see right here that the file names you've used, it's just plain course servers or course editor and so on. We didn't really use the previous format that we used to follow, the component.service.js.
Yeah, no. Follow this naming convention. Basically, is just a dash between the words. And if whatever you're working on, whether it's a course or module or a lesson, later on, right? Just use that as the beginning of your file, and then what it is, right? Whether it's a component or service or whatever it is, an editor. Yeah, that's a simple. I'm not enforcing naming convention here.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Ask a couple of quick ones. The
I'm
first
sorry?
one is, yeah, for these assignment, are we using the same Git repository as for assignments 1 and 2?
No, this is a new repository. It's a React repository.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, just like we did for at the beginning of this lecture. Last week.
Okay. This is a small one, but I noticed that you're not using semicolons, and I know that the browser sort of puts those automatically. Is there a guideline that we should? Is it common to use it?
You
Does it
should be
depend on
using
the job?
semicolons.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been lazy, but you should be using semicolons.
Okay.
Yep.
And the very last one, I was having issues putting an image on the cards.
Okay.
I don't remember if that's a requirement. You putting in for the card view, the grid view, including images inside the card.
Yeah, you can use source SRC in the where is it in the card, right? You have SRC, and then you can point to an image. Did we remove it? Oh, I guess we did remove it. Yeah, there's an you say image and then say SRC, and then here you can put a string that points to where the URL of the image is. Hello? Hello?
Sorry, my microphone wasn't working. Yes, that I think that helps. I was trying to use the React image that comes with the default application. For some reason, I that wasn't working. But I might have like a syntax error.
I think you what was there originally might have not had the / at the end, and that's a syntax error.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
All right. All right, everyone. Thank you.
Hi, Professor.
Yes.
So I have a question, maybe not very related to this course. Do you know Jakarta EE? Because I was learning Spring, and I just got confused about the difference of Java and Jakarta EE.
Yeah, no, I haven't used Jakarta. No.
No.
I mean, I know of it, but I haven't used it. No.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Sure.
Professor, I have one quick.
Yep.
So when we were implementing the delete course function, we did not mention course service.delete course, but still it took it as not the recursive function, but it tried to refer to the delete course function which we have created. So can you tell how did it differentiate between those?
Yeah, so whenever you're going to reference any functions that you declare in your class, you have to put the this dot keyword. Right. So if you want to reference update course, you have to say this dot update keyword. So that's why this works like that. Right. Because well, actually, no. Which one do we have? Yeah, delete course. Where we have delete course somewhere.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah, over here.
Yep.
Yeah, so this would be recursive.
Yeah, okay, got it. Thank you.
All right, anything else? All right, good night, everyone.